The author of this fanfiction name is Fanatic06. He works on fanfiction.net and the link is in the description to the stories.
Chapter 25, The Strongest Primeape. With Celadon City behind them, the group was now continuing on to Saffron City. To their great relief, they learned that Saffron City wasn't too far, and it would only take them about 3 days to get there. They were glad they wouldn't need to be camping for a whole month between these two cities like they had with others. At the moment, they were enjoying a nice lunch prepared by none other than Brock and in high spirits. The Pokémon were either eating, playing around, or introducing themselves to the new members of the team, Eevee and Psyduck. Eevee happily introduced itself and wanted to play with everyone while Psyduck just gave them all a blank stare with only a mumble to indicate it. Even heard them. Serena noticed how well Eevee was getting along with everyone and smiled to herself. Eevee was a very playful and friendly Pokémon. It just liked to play a little too rough since it tackled Serena too many times. It had been 2 days since she caught it, so she was beginning to get used to it. That didn't help ease the pain of falling on her behind very much, though. Serena also noticed Charla's attitude towards Ash's Charmander had changed since it evolved into Charmeleon. Charmander would try to go over and converse with Charla, but Charla would just give a disappointed sigh before saying anything rather than gushing like it did before. This seemed to upset Charmander. Serena supposed with evolution came new personalities sometimes, or maybe Charla was waiting for Ash's Charmander to one day become Charmeleon, as well. In Charla's mind, it imagined Charmander evolving into a Charmeleon before it did. Then it would have strong, handsome Pokémon to sweep it off its feet, but instead, the opposite happened, so Charla wouldn't be able to live out that fantasy now. Serena then looked over at Ash, who was sitting next to her and slurping up his stew. She didn't know why, but Ash was being unusually close to her since they left Celadon City. There was no doubt she enjoyed being this close to Ash, but still wondered what caused this sudden attachment. Maybe Ash was doing it unintentionally, but Serena didn't want to ask in case it would make Ash uncomfortable. She decided to just enjoy this closeness with Ash while it lasted. Ash must have noticed her gaze as he looked at her and gave her a smile, which Serena returned. As a test to see what would happen, she scooted a little closer to Ash to see if he would widen the gap like he usually did or stay where he was. As she expected, he didn't pull away this time, so maybe he was staying close to her on purpose. After all, did he enjoy being this close to her like she did with him? Were Leaf and Misty correct about Ash's feelings towards her? He liked her as much as she liked him but just didn't realize it. Serena blushed at the thought that Ash might actually like her back. While on her thoughts of Ash, she realized his birthday was only 2 weeks away. He would be turning 11 years old then. Her birthday was only 2 months after his. Where did the time go? It was hard to believe they have been on a journey that long. As Serena thought about Ash's birthday, she began to think about what she could get him. He would no doubt want something that was helpful on his Pokémon journey. Ash loved cake, so he would also want one of those as well. She then realized what a nice gesture it would be if she actually made the cake herself rather than having someone buy it at the store like in the past. The only problem was she didn't know how to bake. Her mother was an excellent cook and was going to teach Serena at one point, but Serena left before her mother could get around to it. She then looked over at Brock. There was no doubt Brock could make anything. Maybe she could ask Brock to teach her how to cook, possibly even clean as well. That would no doubt lighten Brock's load if she took over the chores. Sometimes it would also allow Ash to be impressed with how great a wife she might make one day. Of course, she wasn't going to do everything, so Ash would need to learn some things, as well. Serena then began to blush furiously. Did she actually just think about Ash and her getting married? Hey, Serena. What are you doing? Ash asked once he saw Serena's weird expression and red face. Heh. It's nothing. Serena said quickly with a nervous laugh. Well guys, we better start packing up to leave so we can get to Saffron City as soon as possible, Brock told the group as he stood up from the ground. Good idea. I've had my share so I'm good to go. Ash agreed. You had more than your fair share, Ash. You had 4 bowls of Brock's stew. Misty teased. It's no more than I usually eat, Ash defended as he and the rest of the group began to return their Pokemon except Pikachu to their Pokeballs. You can say that again, Misty muttered. The group was then interrupted by a rustling in the bushes. They looked over towards them to see a Mankey poke its head out. Oh, cool. It's a wild Mankey. Ash exclaimed. The Mankey then came out of the bushes and walked over towards the group. Hey there, Mankey. I don't have any stew, but I have a donut. Would you like to try one? Brock asked in a friendly tone. Mankey. The pig monkey Pokemon responded happily before going over to Brock. Brock then reached into his backpack before pulling out a box of donuts. He then pulled one out and handed it to Mankey. The Pokemon then sniffed the donut and began eating it happily. You know, guys. I could really use a fighting type Pokemon since I haven't caught one yet. What better way to start than with a Mankey? I should be able to get it while it's distracted, Ash said as he pulled out a spare Pokeball. Shouldn't you at least let it finish the donut first? Misty asked. Mankey are known to have horrible tempers. Maybe you're right, Ash relented as he clipped his Pokeball back to his belt. The last thing he wanted to do was anger the Mankey. The Mankey finished eating the donut and looked at Brock with pleading eyes as if asking for more. Sorry about that, Mankey, Brock said sheepishly as he rubbed the back of his neck. All the donuts are already gone. Mankey gave a sad look at first, but soon nodded its head. It then turned towards Ash and its eyes lit up with excitement. Hey, what do you guys know? It looks like Mankey likes me, Ash smiled once he saw the Pokemon giving him a happy expression. Mankey then leaped forward as if it were going to give Ash a hug. Ash opened his arms for the embrace but was in for a rude awakening. Instead of hugging Ash, Mankey reeled back its arms and punched Ash in the stomach, causing him to grunt and bend over in pain. Mankey then reached out and grabbed Ash's hat and placed it on its head. It seemed Mankey only liked Ash's hat rather than Ash himself. Serena, Misty, Brock, and Pikachu cringed when they saw the painful blow to Ash's stomach. They then saw the Mankey pointing and laughing at Ash. Hey, Mankey. Give me my hat. Ash shouted once he recovered from the punch to his stomach. Instead, Mankey turned its hat back and imitated throwing a Pokeball, mimicking Ash's movements. Ash got an angry look that he was being mocked by this Pokemon. I'll show you. Ash cried as he lunged forward at Mankey. Mankey easily jumped out of the way, which caused Ash to faceplant right on the ground. He lifted himself off the ground and glared at Mankey. Fine, Mankey. If that's the way you want it, I'll take it back by force. Ash yelled. He then turned to his faithful rodent partner. Go, Pikachu. Pikachu ran in front of Ash and glared at the Mankey. The Mankey glared back. They were in a staring contest. Use quick attack, Pikachu. Ash ordered. The yellow rodent ran forward to slam into Mankey, but the pig monkey Pokemon jumped over Pikachu before it could reach it. It then landed a short distance away. Mankey then left Ash and gave him a taunting look by mimicking him again. It then began to run away. Oh no, you don't! Ash yelled as he took off after the Mankey. Wait, Ash! The group cried as they followed him. Ash was running after Mankey as fast as he could. That was his official Pokemon League hat that Mankey had. Ash couldn't let it get away. He had to send in 1,000,000 postcards to win it. Unfortunately, it seemed Mankey was a lot faster than Ash. As Ash was chasing it, Mankey saw some thick trees at the entrance to a small forest. It then hopped into the clearing and disappeared into the sea of trees. Ash stopped running and began searching as hard as he could for any trace of where Mankey had gone to. By that time, the rest of the group had caught up to Ash and were panting heavily. "Did you get your hat?" Serena asked while panting. "No. I lost it," Ash muttered sadly. He couldn't believe his favorite hat was stolen just like that by some wild Pokemon. "Oh, well. It was just a hat," Misty shrugged, which caused Ash to glare at her. Misty clearly didn't know the value Ash held to his hat. "Hey. That is my official Pokemon League hat," Ash argued. "So? What's so special about it?" Misty scoffed. Serena knew how much that Pokemon League hat meant to him. He wore it every day, and the only time he took it off is when he was sleeping or bathing. Ash and his hat were rarely seen apart. Serena could say she felt the same way about her favorite pink hat. However, it was special to her for a different reason than Ash had with his hat. Ash had given her this hat on her last birthday, and she would be crushed if it was ever stolen. "It's okay, Ash. I'm sure we will find your hat. Remember, Pikachu can track the scents of other people and Pokemon," Serena assured as she gave him a smile. "Oh yeah. That's right." Ash remembered. He then turned to Pikachu. "Do you think you can track down that wild Mankey, buddy? Are we seriously going to stop our traveling just to search for your hat?" Misty asked in disbelief. "Come on, Misty. Try to understand how Ash feels. That's his favorite hat, so he can't just get a new one," Brock told her. "This is ridiculous," Misty muttered. "Oh yeah," Serena countered. "How would you like it if Mankey stole your Misty fishing lure?" Misty froze. That fishing lure in her image was her favorite thing. She had made it herself. She would certainly be upset if it was ever taken, despite being somewhat silly. Maybe she was being too hard on Ash. Misty sighed, but then gave Ash a small smile. "Fine, Ash. Let's search for you hat." Ash smiled at Serena for sticking up to him, and then he turned to Pikachu. "Have you come up with anything yet, Pikachu?" "Pikachu." The rodent responded as it began to run down the pathway. "It think Pikachu is onto it," Ash said excitedly as the group followed it. It turns out Mankey had covered quite a bit of ground in such a short time. They had been on Mankey's scent for 15 minutes and still hadn't caught up to it yet. Just when the group thought they might never catch up to the pig monkey Pokemon, they began to hear quite a bit of noise. Pikachu stopped in its tracks and perked its ears in the direction of the noise. It then motioned for the group to stop and put its finger to its lip. Pikachu then pointed one of its short fingers in the direction of a few bushes that were off the main pathway. The group quietly made their way over to the bushes. As they were getting closer, the noise was turning out to be a lot of grunting and yelling. The group peeked over the bushes and stared in surprise at what they saw. There was a small group of Mankey, about 8, that were formed in a circle, all cheering and making all kinds of noises. In the center of the group of Mankey was another Mankey and a Primeape. Ash gasped when he saw the Mankey that was in the center was the one who stole his hat. Sure enough, the Pokemon still had Ash's hat on top of its head. It appeared to be in some kind of fight with the Primeape. "Maybe while it's distracted, I can get my hat back," Ash whispered. "I don't think that is such a good idea. Do you really want to get in the middle of a group of Mankey who are fighting each other?" Serena whispered back. Ash saw her point and shuddered at the thought that he would be beaten to a pulp if he attempted to take his hat back now. He and the rest of group decided to secretly watch. from behind the bushes to see how this played out. Upon seeing how Mankey and Primeape were looking at each other with hatred, it was clear they were bitter rivals. The Mankey and Primeape were glaring at each other for a while before the Mankey made its move. It jumped up into the air towards the Primeape to deliver a karate chop. The Primeape was ready, however. It reared its fist back and slammed it into the Mankey's face before it could connect with karate chop. Mankey sailed towards the ground and landed painfully. The Primeape then approached Mankey and began to pummel it with its fist continuously. Mankey wasn't even getting a chance to retaliate. The group of Mankey surrounding the two continued to shout and cheer at the fight that was taking place. They didn't seem to care who was losing and who was winning. Once the Primeape seemed satisfied with the amount of damage it did, it quit its barrage of punches and stood back to see if Mankey would get up. Mankey slowly got up to its feet and glared defiantly at the Primeape in front it. Surprisingly, Ash's hat had managed to stay on its head. The larger pig monkey stared back at Mankey for a second before it began to laugh cruelly. Upon seeing that it was being made fun of, Mankey charged at the Primeape with every ounce of strength it still had. Once again, Primeape wounded its fist back and slammed it in Mankey's face. Mankey immediately dropped to the ground. The Primeape then went over to Mankey and began to kick it back and forth. Mankey was giving out grunts and cries of pain with each kick. The group grimaced at the brutality of the Primeape. Those two must have a very strong dislike for each other. The Primeape finished pummeling the Mankey and stood back to see if it would stand up again. Its mouth wasn't visible, but it was clear the Primeape was smirking right now. The Mankey raised its head off the ground and stared defiantly at the Primeape once more. It then couldn't take the pain anymore and fell face forward on the ground. The Primeape went over and planted its foot on Mankey's backside. It then raised its right fist in triumph at its victory. The rest of Mankey cheered and grunted in approval at the fight that had just taken place. The Primeape gave one last disgusted look at the fallen Mankey before smirking and walking off, all the Mankey that formed a circle following suit. Once the Primeape and Mankey were out of sight, the group saw how hurt Mankey was and decided it needed some help fast. They went over to it and knelt down to see if it was okay. The Mankey raised its head off of the ground and looked at the group in confusion. "Hey, Mankey. How are you feeling?" Ash asked as he reached forward to take his hat from Mankey's head. Upon seeing what Ash was doing, it got an angry look and slapped Ash's hand away with its own before grimacing at the pain it was in. "Ash, maybe now isn't the best time to take your hat back. Wait until Mankey feels better, and then try it," Brock told him. "Right," Ash nodded as he rubbed his stinging hand. Brock quickly checked its condition and got a grim expression on his face. "Nothing appears to be broken, but it does have some pretty nasty bumps and bruises on it. I recommend we get it to a Pokemon Center as fast as we can," Brock reported. "But there aren't any Pokemon Centers in the area," Serena said sadly. The group thought for a moment before Brock spoke up again. "I know," he said as he put his fist in his other palm. "We can gather some plants from around this area and turn them into medicine like Melanie taught us a while back." "Great idea, Brock." Misty agreed. "Let's go. You guys go on ahead. Pikachu and I will stay here with Mankey to make sure it's okay," Ash told the group. Serena, Brock, and Misty nodded their heads and went off in different directions to find the proper plants to make medicine with. Ash got his sleeping bag out from his backpack and lay it down on the ground. He then gently picked up Mankey. I weakly struggled in Ash's arms but soon relented because it was too weak. Ash then placed it on the sleeping bag for a more comfortable place to lie down than on the ground. Ash gave Mankey a reassuring smile. "Don't worry, Mankey. We are here to help you. I promise I won't try to take my hat back from you anymore." Mankey raised its head off the sleeping bag and gave Ash a curious glance. As if reading Mankey's mind, Ash went on. Yeah. It's true that hat is incredibly important to me. I was pretty furious when you stole it, but right now the most important thing is making sure that you are okay, he said. Mankey continued to stare at Ash in confusion. It had just stolen this kid's hat, yet he was more worried about its well-being? Who did this kid think he was? Just because the kid was being nice to it now didn't mean it was going to give up the hat. Plus, Mankey thought the hat looked much better on it than it did on this kid. Ash, was it? Mankey gave a huff before it placed its head back down on the sleeping bag. Don't push yourself, Ash warned gently. Pika Pie, Pikachu agreed. Mankey grunted and glared at the two. It didn't want to receive any help from this kid or his friends. It was too proud for that. About 20 minutes later, the rest of the gang arrived with a few different plants. They then set them on the ground and pulled out some utensils from their backpacks. With these plants, we should be able to make some impromptu medicine. It won't be as good treatment at a Pokemon Center, but it should still make Mankey feel a lot better. Brock reasoned. The group then began crushing the plants into fine powder with their various utensils and adding a few ingredients like Melanie had suggested. Then they got a glass of water from one of their water kegs and added the medicine to it for Mankey to drink. Here, Mankey. Drink this. It will make you feel better, Ash said gently as he held the glass up to Mankey's lips. Mankey promptly turned away and grunted angrily. I know you are in a lot of pain right now, and you aren't going to get any better unless you drink this, Ash tried again. Mankey turned around and saw the sincerity in Ash's eyes. It trusted the concoction in the boy's hands would make it feel better, but it was too stubborn. Its pride already took a massive hit by being crushed by that primeape. It didn't need to be humiliated again by accepting help from humans. Please, Ash said sincerely. Mankey finally decided the pain was too great and begrudgingly began to take small sips of the medicine. The medicine was pretty bitter, but it wasn't the worst thing Mankey had ever tasted before. It swallowed and rested its head back on the sleeping bag. Thanks, Mankey, Ash smiled happily. Now you just need some nice rest. We will keep watch over you to make sure nothing bad happens while you are recovering. Now wait just a minute here. Mankey appreciated the medicine the group gave it, but it refused to be babysat like some weakling. It shakily stood its feet, made sure Ash's hat was firmly on its head, and began to shuffle away from the group. You shouldn't try to walk right now, Mankey. Ash warned. Mankey turned around to glare at Ash. It then delivered another punch to Ash's gut and resumed walking. Ash! Serena cried worriedly once she saw Ash double over in pain. She then ran over to help him back to his feet. Pika Pikachu! The yellow rodent said angrily as it ran in front of Mankey and sparked its cheeks at it for the sucker punch it gave Ash. It's fine, buddy, Ash coughed as Serena helped him up. Pikachu glared at Mankey one last time before allowing it to pass by it. Mankey continued to shuffle along the path until it collapsed once more. It clearly still wasn't feeling very well despite taking some medicine shortly before. Ash went over to it. Mankey, I know you don't really want our help, but if you don't get enough rest, you could injure yourself more than you already are. At least stay long enough to feel better, and then you can leave, he said. As stubborn as Mankey was, it knew Ash was right. If it wanted to recover anytime soon, it would need to receive help from these humans. It finally stopped staring defiantly at Ash and allowed him to pick it up. Ash did so and carried it back to the sleeping bag to rest Mankey on it. Deciding to give Ash a break for a change, Mankey took Ash's hat off its head and handed it back to Ash. The raven-haired boy was rather surprised at this gesture from the previously hostile Pokemon. Wow! Thanks, Mankey, Ash said gratefully as he took the hat. Mankey said nothing as it lay its head back on the sleeping bag. It then closed its eyes to try to get as much rest as it could. It was now almost 11 o'clock at night, yet Ash was still up watching Mankey. Pikachu was curled up next to Ash, fast asleep. Brock had volunteered a few times to watch Mankey to give Ash a break, but Ash refused each time. He didn't know why, but he felt a connection with this Mankey. Was it because it had stolen his hat? Was it because it had punched him in the stomach twice already? He wasn't sure. Ash, it's getting pretty late. Shouldn't you be getting to sleep? Serena wondered as she went over to where Ash and Mankey were. I will in a little bit, Ash promised. I just want to give one last dose of the medicine to Mankey before I do, but that isn't for another 30 minutes. In that case, it's getting a little chilly out here at nights now. Brock heated some hot chocolate for you over the fire. Would you like some? Serena asked as she held the cup in front of Ash. Thanks. I would, Ash smiled as he took the cup from her hands. He turned around to face Brock, who was getting ready for bed, and gave a slight wave to show his appreciation. Brock smiled back and nodded his before he got into his sleeping bag. Misty had just gone to sleep a few minutes ago. Ash then took a small sip of the piping hot liquid and smiled at how good it was. Brock was phenomenal when it came to fixing food and drinks. Hey, Ash. Would you mind if I stayed up with you to watch Mankey? Serena asked somewhat shyly. Not at all. Go right ahead, Ash replied while giving her a warm smile and patting the spot on the ground next to him. Serena smiled back and sat down next to Ash and took a sip of her own hot chocolate. A few minutes went by without them saying anything to each other before Serena decided to break the silence. So Ash, what have you thought of your Pokemon journey so far? She asked him. What do you mean? Ash replied while giving her a curious glance. I mean, is it what you thought it would be? I have to admit, when we first began this journey, I didn't think it would be this hard. I thought we were going to stay safe as long as we had our Pokemon, sleeping soundly under the beautiful stars every night, and seeing and catching new Pokemon every other day. It was pretty naive of me to think that. Though, Serena answered. I know, Ash agreed. When we first started out, I never would have pictured some of the things we would face. We were getting into all sorts of danger almost every day, the Spearow attack, the Beedrills, our unfortunate run-ins with Team Rocket, and meeting people like Paul and Damien. Serena frowned at the things Ash was telling her but nodded her head in understanding nonetheless before Ash continued. But then I think of all the great things so far of being on this journey, and they definitely outweigh the bad. I have had a lot of fun on this journey so far. I've met great friends in Misty, Brock, and Richie. I have the best Pokemon a guy could ever ask for. I get a chance to grow up and become independent now that I am away from home. If I could do it over again, I would choose to come on the journey every time just so I could have even one of the good things so far, Ash said. I think of our journey the same way, Serena agreed. It may not be as easy as we first thought, but we are having a lot of fun. Yeah, and it helps that you are traveling with me, also, Ash finished the last part somewhat nervously. Serena blushed at Ash's words but went unnoticed by the raven-haired boy because of the only source of light being the dimness from the fire. She then held her hand over her heart. I'm really glad I'm traveling with you also, Ash, Serena said sincerely. There isn't anyone else I would rather travel with. The two trainers sat in silence for a few more minutes before Serena decided to take a chance with something she hadn't done yet, lay her head on Ash's shoulder. She never would have tried this at the start of their journey, but felt they had grown much closer since then with all the things they had been through together. It also helped that Ash seemed to be more receptive of her closeness to him than he had been previously, if his behavior since they left Celadon was any indication. Serena slowly began to lean her head in Ash's direction. She gave a quick glance to see if he was giving any kind of reaction. He wasn't. He was too busy staring straight ahead at Mankey. Serena kept leaning closer towards Ash. She was almost there. She began to blush furiously and then, "Oh, I better give Mankey its medicine," Ash said as he got off the ground to go to Mankey, completely oblivious to what Serena was trying to do at the moment. Unfortunately for Serena, she had leaned over too far by the time Ash got up. She missed his shoulder and fell over sideways onto the ground. "Are you okay, Serena?" Ash asked in worry as he turned around to face her once he heard the thud. "Ha ha ha. Yeah, I'm fine, Ash. You should go ahead and get Mankey its medicine," Serena replied nervously as she rubbed the back of her head. This time she was blushing from pure embarrassment. Same old Ash, after all, she thought to herself. Maybe it wasn't quite the time to try that, after all. The group was awoken to the sound of grunting and screaming. They looked around frantically at the rude awakening but didn't see anything. The sound appeared to carry so it was some distance away, but the group still was wondering what was causing that noise. It did sound familiar, though. Whoa! Mankey's gone. Ash cried in alarm once he saw his sleeping bag was vacant. "Where do you think it could have gone?" Misty asked. "I bet we'll find our answer if we follow this noise," Brock suggested. The group quickly shook of their grogginess and ran to the source of the noise. They entered a small clearing in the forest and saw Mankey and most likely the same primeape, facing each other with glares on their faces. There was also a crowd of Mankey formed in a circle around the two like before. Mankey isn't actually going to battle that primeape again so soon, is it? Serena asked worriedly. "I think it's because of Mankey's pride," Brock explained. "It is sort of similar to when Pikachu faced LT Surge's reissue. Those two are apparently big rivals, so Mankey has to beat it to prove itself. It still shouldn't be battling right now," Ash said firmly as he went out into clearing. "Hey, Mankey. You still haven't fully recovered yet. You need to save your energy." Upon hearing Ash's voice, Mankey turned around and faced Ash angrily. It grunted and began to ferociously stomp the ground with its feet. Ash took this as a sign to back off before he made Mankey go on a rampage, which would have been a very bad thing. There was nothing Ash could do to help it anymore. "Ash," Serena trailed as she watched Ash come back to the group. "I just don't want to see Mankey end up being hurt again," Ash muttered as he grit his teeth. "We did our best to help, Ash, especially you. If it doesn't want to listen, it isn't your fault," Brock said reassuringly. Ash nodded but still had a worried look on his face as he watched the fight was just about to take place. The two pig monkey Pokemon continued to stare at each other angrily before Mankey decided to make the first move once more. It gave what sounded like a battle cry and charged for the primeape. Mankey leaped into the air for a karate chop once more. Having been through this before, primeape once again reared its fist back and punched Mankey as hard as it could. Mankey went flying backwards and landed painfully on the ground. Primeape went over to Mankey and began to pummel it back and forth with its fists. Once more. The group could see this fight was playing out just like the last one. They wanted to intervene but knew they would have the whole group of angry Pokemon after them if they did. They could only watch helplessly. Once Primeape was finished, it lifted Mankey off of the ground, and began to swing it around and around. "I think Primeape is getting ready for a seismic toss," Brock stated in a grim tone. "Mankey might be down for the count again after this." Ash looked unworriedly at Mankey. He didn't care if he got a black eye or another punch in the gut for this. He wasn't going to just sit by and let this Mankey keep hurting itself. Once Primeape had swung Mankey around to a suitable speed, it let go and Mankey went sailing through the air towards a tree. Ash took off running as fast as he could in attempt to stop Mankey's path. Mankey continued to fly towards the tree. Mankey! Ash cried as he leaped towards the Pokemon and caught it at the last second. Unfortunately, the force of the impact knocked Ash backwards and he ended up hitting the tree instead. Ash! Pika-Pie! The group and Pikachu cried worriedly once they saw Ash crumple to the ground. Ash groaned in pain at the impact. Mankey looked up at Ash worriedly. It couldn't believe that Ash had just saved it like that. This kid really cared about it? Hey, Mankey. Are you okay? Ash asked between the pain. Mankey grunted in response to show it was fine. It then brushed the dirt off Ash and looked up in concern. I'm fine. Thanks for your concern, Ash responded appreciatively. He then got off the ground with Mankey holding Ash's hand to help him up. Mankey continued to look at Ash curiously. What a strange human this was. It had done all sorts of mean things, yet this boy proved time and time again he really cared. After being saved multiple times, maybe this kid was pretty cool, after all. Hey, Mankey. You still have a battle to win. What do say we beat this Primeape together? Ash suggested. Mankey grunted in approval and turned back to face the Primeape. It then began to glow a bright white in color. Wow! You're evolving, Mankey. Ash said happily as he watched the Pokemon grow larger. The rest of the group watched in awe as well. Once it stopped glowing, a Primeape stood in place of where Mankey was. Primeape! It shouted. The other Primeape looked in surprise that Mankey had evolved and was even going to fight alongside a human, but soon returned to its angry glare. Ash and Primeape stood next to each other. They were ready to battle. Okay, Primeape. Use your low kick. Ash yelled. Primeape charged at the other Primeape once again. It reeled its fist back ready to punch the daylights out of the former Mankey again, but was in for a surprise. Primeape instead ducked under the wild Primeape's incoming fist. It then delivered a clean sweep which knocked the opposing Primeape right off its feet. It then hit the ground with a thud. That was awesome, Primeape. Ash said as he gave it thumbs up. Primeape nodded in return. Now let's try your karate chop while it's on the ground. Primeape then brought an outstretched hand towards the downed one. The wild Primeape caught the chop in its own hands, but Ash's still had a free hand. Use Mega Punch. Ash called. Primeape then delivered a punch to the opposing Primeape's face for a change. It felt good for a little payback with as many times as it was punched in the face by this thing. The enemy Primeape yelled out in pain before jumping to its feet and began thrashing about. It began to attack Primeape mercilessly now that it was on a rampage. It pummeled Primeape to the ground and saw Ash. Who said this human could join this battle? He should mind his own business. It then began to charge towards Ash, ready to punish him as much as it could for helping its rival. Primeape looked on worriedly as the enemy Primeape charged at Ash. This boy had saved it. Now it was its turn to return the favor. Ash braced himself for what seemed like a lot of pain coming, but it never came. Primeape had jumped in between its enemy and Ash and delivered another mega punch to the enemy Primeape, smashing its fist into its face. The enemy Primeape was knocked to the ground and struggled to get back up. It glared hatefully at the other Primeape before the other one raised its fists protectively in front of Ash. Knowing its defeat, the opposing Primeape took off in another part of the woods, the group of Mankey following it. Primeape then raised both its fists into the air and grunted happily at finally beating its rival. You protected me from that other Primeape. Thank you, Ash said gratefully. Primeape turned around and nodded at Ash. That was really great, Ash. You two did awesome. Serena exclaimed as she and the rest of the group went over to join the two. You two work really well together. Misty agreed. We do make a great team, don't we, Primeape? Ash asked the pig monkey Pokemon. Primeape. It agreed. Primeape had to admit, it didn't think it would have won against its rival if it wasn't for Ash. If it's okay with you, Primeape, what do you say we continue fighting as a team and grow stronger together? Ash suggested. Primeape seemed to think it over for a moment. It never would have guessed it would ever become a trainer's Pokemon. It had wanted to be independent its whole life. On the other hand, if it wanted to reach its maximum potential, Ash definitely seemed to be the way to go. Primeape then nodded its head and held out its hand for Ash to shake. That's great, Primeape. Welcome to the team. Ash smiled as he shook Primeape's hand. Then without warning, Primeape punched Ash in the stomach and took his hat before placing it on its head, which caused everyone to sweat drop. It still seemed to have not gotten over that habit. Just because it and Ash were friends now didn't mean Primeape was going to stop taking Ash's hat every chance it got. Well, it seems you and Primeape are a team now. Just make sure to hold onto your hat from now on, Misty said in amusement. I will, Ash mumbled as he held his stomach in pain. He then took his hat back from Primeape and took out a spare Pokeball. All right, Primeape. Return. The Pokeball shot out its reed beam towards Primeape where it willingly allowed itself to enter the Pokeball. The Pokeball immediately dinged to signify Primeape's capture. Then Ash watched sadly as the Pokeball was teleported to Professor Oak's lab since he had more than 6 Pokemon with him at the moment. We will battle together real soon again, Primeape. I promise, Ash thought. You know, Ash. You have become a really great trainer since I've known you, Brock praised. How do you figure? Ash asked him curiously. Think about just now when you and Primeape were battling that other one. At the time, Primeape was an evolved, wild Pokemon, and it still listened to your commands. It takes a great trainer for any wild Pokemon to listen to you, especially an evolved one. If you weren't any good, Primeape would not have battled with you whether you gained its trust or not, Brock explained. That was really impressive, Ash. Serena agreed. Chew. Pikachu said happily as it hopped onto Ash's shoulder and gave him a thumbs up. Wow. You're right. Thanks guys. I may have what it takes to become a Pokemon master, after all. Ash smiled. Just don't let it go to your head, Misty warned. I won't, Ash promised. Well, what are we waiting for? Saffron City is calling our name. Let's go. Then just like always, Ash began running as fast as he could towards Saffron City with Pikachu on his shoulder and the rest of the group close behind them. They couldn't wait to see what awaited them in Saffron City. The president of Silphco was very busy at the moment. He had been working on a special type of Pokeball for many months now. It was supposed to have the power to capture any Pokemon in the world without fail. He had asked his employees not to disturb him the rest of the day until he gave the word. After much hard work, he was ready to announce the finishing touches needed to get the Master Ball, as he would call it, ready for testing. If the prototype worked, they would be able to have these types of Pokeballs in mass production within the next couple of years. This was very exciting and would be Silphco's biggest achievement yet. He went over to the intercom to make the announcement, but he heard a loud crash downstairs and a whole bunch of shouting and screaming going on in the floors below. The president knew something was wrong and immediately pressed the button on the intercom for the guards but received no response. He then pressed the button for his secretary, but received no response from her either. This was a very bad sign. The president then heard footsteps approaching the door hurriedly. The footsteps soon stopped and frantic knocks were heard on the other side. Sincerely hoping it was one of the guards or his secretary to explain the situation, the president timidly called out, "Hello? Who is it?" For a moment, there was no response. The president was about to call the police before there was a scream and gunfire rang on the other side of the door. The door was then kicked open, and 4 people, 2 in black, 2 in white, and a Meowth shuffled into the room with evil smirks on their faces, each one holding a gun. All 4 people had a big red R on their uniform. The president looked in the doorway and gasped in horror when he saw his personal guard sprawled on the floor. Relax. He's just knocked out. There was no sense in killing him unless he tries to defy us, a blonde-haired woman of the group muttered when she saw the president's horrified expression. Who are you people? The president asked fearfully. Have you really never heard of the infamous Team Rocket? The red-haired woman of the bunch asked arrogantly. Team Rocket. How did you crooks get in here? What about the security and our guards? The president cried in alarm. Oh, your guards? You must mean our guards. We've had disguised Rocket members among your employees and guards for weeks now, just waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. We are sad to say your real guards are no longer with us, if you know what I mean, the blonde-haired woman smirked evilly. The president got a panicked expression on his face. Team Rocket had infiltrated the Silphco's security so easily. As the president of the company, he felt responsible for everything. How could he have let this happen? What do you crooks want with Silphco? The president asked. You will know soon enough. The boss is on his way up right now, a raspy-voiced, green-haired man replied. Sure enough, the president heard more footsteps coming down the hallway to his office. Soon the footsteps were revealed to belong to a very tall, intimidating man. He had short, neatly combed brown hair and wore an orange suit. A Persian was by his side. Once the man entered the room, he turned to the 4 people and Meowth who were giving him their full attention. Jesse, James, Cassidy, Butch, Meowth. You have each done a fine job. Now leave us and keep guard. Make sure no one who isn't a Team Rocket member enter this floor. Yes, sir. They saluted before leaving the room. The Rocket boss turned back to the president and smirked before gesturing to his chair. Good afternoon, Mr. President. You seem tense. Please sit back down. The president noticed the dark man's Persian hissing threateningly at him, so he decided it was best to do what the evil man said. He slowly sat back down into his office chair behind the desk while the orange-suited man went over and sat down on the nearby couch and crossed his legs like he owned the Silphco rather than the president. The dark man then gave an evil smile at the president. How rude of me. I haven't introduced myself yet. My name is Giovanni. I am the leader of Team Rocket. You and I have much to discuss, Mr. President. Chapter 26, The Sylph Company Part 1. The group had just arrived in Saffron City, the largest city in the Kanto region. It had only taken them a few days to get here from Celadon. That isn't to say the route between the 2 places had been uneventful. Ash had acquired a new Pokemon and friend in Primeape, who was just as strong as it was mischievous. Ash and Serena had also made sure to train their Pokemon this time. Serena in particular had wanted to train her new Eevee. The only problem was Eevee seemed more interested in playing and tackling Serena than battling. It seemed Serena now had a second Pokemon that was a handful after Jigglypuff. Hey, Brock, Misty. Would any of you guys happen to know the kind of things Saffron City has to offer? I mean, it is a really large city, Ash asked as the group entered into the busy streets. Well, aside from a Pokemon gym and a battle chateau, this place also has a fighting dojo and many companies known across the world. The most famous is the Sylph Company. Brock answered. Don't forget all of the various department stores and malls, Misty added. The Sylph Company and Fighting Dojo, Ash mused to himself. What are they? This city used to have 2 gyms, the Psychic-type gym led by Sabrina, and the fighting type gym led by Kyo. The fighting type gym lost its gym status when they were completely destroyed by the trainers at Sabrina's gym. Now it is just a fighting dojo where trainers can help their Pokemon get stronger through tournaments. The winner gets to choose between two rare fighting type Pokemon, a Hitmonlee or Hitmonchan, Brock explained. What about the Sylph Company? Ash asked again. You've never heard of the Sylph Company, Ash? Misty asked in surprise. No, Ash replied, clearly not knowing how famous it was. The Sylph Company is the very reason people are able to become Pokemon trainers. You have them to thank for making Pokeballs, Pokemon medicine, and all other kinds of Pokemon merchandise, Misty said. I see. It might be a good idea to check that place out while we are here, Ash decided. Can we stop by the Pokemon Center first? Serena asked, speaking for the first time since the group arrived in Saffron. Yeah, good idea. I just hope we can find it in this maze of roads and buildings, Ash replied. That's what my map is for. Brock grinned as he pulled it out of his backpack. As soon as the group entered the Pokemon Center, they saw a very familiar face sitting on the sofa with a crowd of cheerleaders around him. Gary! You're still in Saffron City! Ash exclaimed. Yo, everyone! It looks like you all made it to Saffron City, after all, Gary smirked in an arrogant tone. Of course we did. I got the rainbow badge while I was in Celadon City, too. Ash declared as he showed Gary his rainbow badge. Big deal. I got that badge a while back. Only great trainers can win the Marsh badge, Gary scoffed. What do you mean? Ash asked. Sabrina is the gym leader here and trains psychic-type Pokemon. She was by far the most difficult gym leader I've faced. Defeat her, and then I might call you a worthy Pokemon trainer, Gary answered in a cocky tone. That comment really made Ash's blood boil. What would it take for Gary to recognize Ash as a competent trainer? Don't forget, Gary. You promised me a Pokemon battle when we last saw each other, Ash reminded hotly. I only said that to get you off my back. I don't have any interest in battling you, Ash, Gary replied. What? Ash exclaimed in anger. Their conversation was interrupted when Nurse Joy and Chansey came out of the back with 6 Pokeballs on a table. Here you are, Gary. Your Pokemon are as good as new, Nurse Joy said kindly. Thanks, Nurse Joy, Gary replied as he took the Pokeballs and clipped them to his belt. He then turned to the group. Well, I've been in this city long enough. It's time for me to head for Fuchsia City. See you guys later. You really aren't going to battle me? Ash muttered, somewhat hurt that Gary was blowing him off like this. I think you are a better trainer than I first made you out to be, Ash. You aren't terrible, but it's just I have yet to see firsthand any proof. Once you can show me you are a great trainer, I will be more than happy to have a battle with you, Gary replied as he headed for the door, the cheerleaders starting to chant his name as they followed him. Now you wait right there, Gary. Serena shouted angrily. She was not just going to sit by and have Gary act like this to Ash. Gary stopped in his tracks and turned to give Serena an inquisitive glance. Serena? He asked, somewhat surprised she had shouted at him like that. Ash has challenged you to a Pokemon battle twice now, and you have refused him both times. As a fellow Pokemon trainer, you should be more than happy to accept it whenever Ash challenges you. You are acting like a big jerk. Serena continued, not letting up on her glare. That's right. Brock and Misty agreed. Pika-Pi Pikachu. Pikachu added. Guys. Ash trailed. He was touched his friends were sticking up for him. Seeing the intense glares that everyone was giving him, Gary finally let out a sigh. Okay Ash. I'll give you a one-on-one Pokemon battle because I'm in a hurry. Take it or leave. he said. "You're on." Ash yelled with a renewed sense of determination. He was finally going to battle Gary Oak. "I'll meet you in the field at the back of the Pokemon Center. You can come whenever you are ready," Gary muttered as he and his cheerleaders passed the group. "I can't wait to show that, Gary," Ash seethed. "Just remember to relax and focus on the battle. Don't let your feelings towards Gary get in the way of your battle like what happened with Paul," Brock told him. "Right," Ash nodded. Ash and Gary were now standing on opposite sides of the battlefield facing each other with determined expressions on their face, particularly Ash. Misty, Serena, and Gary's cheerleaders were off to the side acting as spectators while Brock was in the center acting as a judge. This will be a one-on-one Pokemon battle. There will be no time limit and the trainers will continue to battle until their Pokemon are unable to begin. Brock declared. "Go Squirtle!" Ash shouted as he threw his Pokeball to release the turtle Pokemon. "Heh, I see you caught your own Squirtle, Ashy boy," Gary smirked. "Since you chose Squirtle, I'll choose this Pokemon. Growlithe, go." Gary's Pokeball opened to reveal an orange-colored dog-like Pokemon with black stripes and a cream-colored stomach. "A Growlithe, huh?" Ash said as he and Serena pulled out their Pokédexes. "Growlithe, the puppy Pokemon. A very loyal Pokemon who will bite and bark to repel intruders," the Pokédexes informed. "Gary is going to choose a fire type against a water type." Serena asked in confusion. "You should know by now that just because Squirtle has the advantage doesn't mean anything. There have been several instances where Pokemon have overcome the odds if their Pokemon are strong enough," Misty reminded. "Okay, Squirtle. Let's start things off with Water Gun," Ash called. "Counter it with your flamethrower, Growlithe," Gary yelled. Both Pokemon launched their respective attacks. They collided in midair. Ash thought the water would be able to push through the fire, but he was proven wrong as the attacks appeared to be evenly matched. Once the attacks were finished, all that was left was a bunch of steam. Gary must have a very powerful Growlithe. "Use Dig, Growlithe." Gary tried. Growlithe quickly dug a hole in the ground and jumped inside it. Squirtle remained on the lookout and tried to see if it could feel any movement underneath it. Growlithe could come up anywhere. Soon Squirtle could feel movement coming up just beneath its feet. Squirtle prepared to jump out of the way, but soon the movement stopped and shifted to just behind it. Squirtle had been tricked. About a second later, Growlithe burst out of the ground and rammed into Squirtle, which sent it flying, but that wouldn't stop it. "Quick, Squirtle! Turn around and use Water Gun," Ash called. Squirtle twisted its body in midair so it was facing Growlithe once more. It then launched out the stream of water straight at Growlithe. The puppy Pokemon and its trainer were both surprised at how quickly Squirtle was able to recover. The attack struck Growlithe and pushed it back, causing it to howl in pain from the super effective attack. "That was awesome, Squirtle. Now use a flying rapid spin," Ash commanded. Squirtle then hid in its shell and started spinning very fast while it was in midair. It soared towards Growlithe, who was still trying to recover from Water Gun. "Heads up, Growlithe," Gary warned, but it was no use as the shell struck Growlithe in the side, which knocked it onto the ground. Squirtle stopped spinning and landed on the ground to give a thumbs up at Ash and Pikachu, who returned it. "Let's finish this off with one more rapid spin," Ash yelled happily. He was actually winning against Gary. Squirtle got a running start and leaped into the air, and once more it began spiraling towards the tired Growlithe. Gary wasn't going to let that happen again. "Use Bite, Growlithe," Gary yelled. Growlithe opened its big jaws and actually caught Squirtle in its mouth while it was in rapid spin. Growlithe's head jerked back slightly from the impact, but it held on tight. It then began to viscously swing its head back and forth. Squirtle! The turtle Pokemon cried in agony as it was caught between Growlithe's sharp teeth. Try to break loose, Squirtle! Ash cried, but it was in vain as Growlithe had too tight of a grip. Growlithe then threw Squirtle out its mouth as hard as it could. Squirtle hit the ground rather hard and let out a groan of pain. Now finish this with takedown, Gary ordered. Growlithe then charged forward and slammed into Squirtle, which sent it airborne once more. Squirtle landed on the ground and moaned in pain once more. It didn't get back up. Squirtle is unable to battle. The winner is Growlithe, Brock declared. Ash sank to his knees. He couldn't believe it. He wanted to beat Gary as much as he wanted to beat Paul, but he just lost the only battle Gary had accepted from him so far. He returned Squirtle to its Pokeball and smiled sadly. You battled really well, Squirtle. Thank you, he told it. Oh, Ash, Serena mumbled sadly as the cheerleaders cheered. She knew how much winning this battle would mean to Ash. Gary returned his Growlithe and thanked it for a job well done. He then walked over to Ash. The raven-haired boy continued to stare at the ground, unable to look Gary in the eye. What Gary said next to Ash surprised him, however. You did a good job, Ash. That was much better battle than I thought it would be, Gary said as he spun Growlithe's Pokeball on his finger. Really? I lost, though, Ash asked in amazement as he looked up at Gary. That's true, but it was really close. One more attack and my Growlithe probably would have been knocked out. I really did enjoy our battle, Gary replied. Ash searched Gary's eyes to see if there was any hint of sarcasm or arrogance, but there wasn't. Ash could only see sincerity. Wow. Thanks, Gary, Ash muttered in shock. I'm sure if you keep training your Pokemon as well as you have, you will be able to reach the Pokemon League, Gary continued as he held out a hand for Ash. Ash accepted the hand and Gary pulled him to his feet. Now that I've had the battle with you, I have to get going. I'll see you some other time, Gary said. He then turned to Serena. Take care, Serena. Good luck with your Battle Chateau challenges. Gary then turned to walk away with his cheerleaders, but something stopped him and drew his attention as well as everyone else's. There was a woman screaming for help as she was running through the field. She was being chased by two men in a black uniform. They were Team Rocket grunts. Team Rocket! Ash cried in alarm. He then turned to his faithful partner. Use Thundershock on those two Team Rocket members to help that lady. Pikachu nodded and leaped off Ash's shoulder. It unleashed its electricity with perfect accuracy. The grunts were so focused on capturing the woman that they didn't notice the group or the electricity flying towards them. They were shocked by the electricity before falling to the ground, knocked out. Great job, Pikachu! Ash praised as he and everyone else ran over to check on the woman who was panting heavily. You saved me. Thank you so much, the woman said between breaths. There now. Take it slow and easy. You're all right now, miss, Brock said gently as he put a comforting hand on the woman's back. The woman soon stopped panting and calmed down. Ash then decided now was a good time to see what was going on. He had to know what Team Rocket was up to this time. What was with his and Team Rocket's paths always entwining? Excuse me, ma'am. Why were those Team Rocket members chasing you? Ash asked curiously. I come from the Sylph Company. I'm the secretary for the president, the woman answered. Wow. You're actually the secretary? Serena exclaimed. I am, the woman confirmed. Something terrible has happened. Team Rocket has taken over the Sylph Company. They what? The group exclaimed in horror. Even Gary Oak looked alarmed at this bit of news. He had never had any run-ins with Team Rocket but still knew they were a dangerous criminal organization. It's true. They broke through our security and had members posing as guards and workers for weeks now to fool everyone, the secretary continued. They just took over a couple of days ago. When did you escape? Ash asked. I barely managed to escape just now. Team Rocket learned of my escape and chased after me while I was trying to seek help. That's where you found me, said the secretary. Why doesn't the police or gym leader do anything? Misty asked. That's the problem. Team Rocket has such a hold on the Sylph company right now. All phone calls are tracked and monitored by members of Team Rocket. Our workers are locked in rooms day and night, forced to work on our latest project. To make matters worse, our president is locked in his office with the boss of Team Rocket. There is no way to get any word out about our company's predicament, the woman explained sadly. That's terrible. Serena gasped. I don't get it. Why would Team Rocket want to take over Sylph Company? Gary spoke up for the first time. They want our master ball as well as control of all of our other merchandise, the secretary replied. A master ball? What's that? Ash asked curiously. It's a special pokeball that our company has been working on for a while now. It is supposed to be able to capture any Pokemon without fail, no matter what it is. We were nearing its completion at the company, and Team Rocket must have found out through their infiltrators. I can only imagine the terrible things they could accomplish if they were able to capture any Pokemon with the Master Ball, the secretary said worriedly. We can't let that happen. Team Rocket has to be stopped, Ash muttered with determination as he and Pikachu nodded their heads at each other. What are you saying, Ash? Serena asked. We're going to Sylph Company to stop Team Rocket. Ash declared. Were you hit in the head, Ash? That's crazy to take on that organization. Gary yelled. This isn't just a few rockets we are dealing with like in the past, Brock warned. There are bound to be far more there than even the power plant in Celadon City. It's true. The whole building is full of Team Rocket members, the secretary confirmed. Then what are we supposed to do? Ash cried. We need to go with the secretary to the police station and inform them of the situation as fast as we can. Brock advised. This can't wait. Ash argued. Saffron is a giant city. There is no telling how long it will take us to get the police and back to the building on foot. How is storming the building any better, Ash? Misty fired back. That's so dangerous and reckless. Oh yeah. Ash retorted, turning to glare at her. What if Team Rocket finds out we got the police? What's stopping them from kidnapping or killing all the workers and the president as revenge before the police arrive? Nobody had an answer to that. They certainly weren't going to put a horrifying action like that past Team Rocket. I say we split up, Ash finally decided. Half of us help the secretary and go with her to the police station, and the other half of us stop Team Rocket at Sylph Company. The rest of the group thought about what Ash had suggested. It didn't seem like there were any better options at the moment. Okay, but who is going to do what? Count me in, Gary said. You're going to help, Gary? Ash asked in surprise. Of course, Ash. This is a serious matter. I hate criminals just as much as the next person. Gary informed. Then how about you, Pikachu, and I go to Sylph Company while Serena, Misty, and Brock go with Secretary? Ash suggested. No. I'm going with you, Ash, Serena said firmly. I don't agree with that, Serena, Ash replied. I'm beginning to think going to Sylphco really is too dangerous, and I don't want to put you in that sort of danger. I don't care. Serena cried as she shook her head. Don't you know that I'm just as worried for you as you are for me? That's exactly why I don't want you to come. Ash argued. At least I'll know one of us will be safe if you don't go with Gary and me. That isn't going to work. I'm tired of standing by on the sidelines while you rush into danger. I still remember the time you were almost killed by a flock of Spearow on our first day as trainers. I'm not letting you do something like that again while I'm around. We are in this together until the end, remember. Serena shouted. Everyone stared at Serena in surprise. They hadn't seen her get this upset in a very long time. We should take her with us, Ash, Gary finally said. The more people that are with us in Silphco, the better. Ash stared into Serena's beautiful blue eyes and saw nothing but a rare fiery determination in them as she stared back into his brown ones. Serena had proven to be a strong trainer if her past battles were any indication. She has also encountered Team Rocket just as much as Ash had, so there is no doubt she would be of help against them. Ash gave a deep sigh. All right, he relented. Come with us to Silphco, but please stay safe. Thank you, Ash, Serena said sincerely. Just know that I can't keep that promise if you can't. I know, Ash replied. That's what worries me. Be careful. The two guards outside Silphco may look like regular guards, but they are really Team Rocket members in disguise, the secretary warned. Right, Ash nodded. Gary then turned to the cheerleaders. You girls wait here at the Pokemon Center. The great Gary Oak and his accomplices will return. Gary is so brave. The cheerleaders cried as tears ran down their faces, causing everyone else to roll their eyes. Okay, Ash. Misty and I will go ahead and tie up these two rockets and then head to the police station. We'll hurry as fast as we can. Brock said. Thanks, Brock, Ash replied as he and Brock clapped hands together. You three better still be in one piece when we come back or else. Misty threatened, but they could tell that she was only saying that because she was worried, too. He. We will, Misty, Ash responded. At least, he hoped so. Once the three trainers and Pokemon reached the Silph Company, they stared up in awe at how big it was. It seemed to be about 11 stories tall. They could see two guards at the entrance to the building with stern expressions on their faces, just as the secretary said. For Team Rocket grunts, they really did look convincing. Despite the very busy streets of Saffron City, nobody was paying them any mind as they all believed it to be nothing new. How are we supposed to get in with those guards there? Serena asked. I'm not sure, Ash replied. If we attack those two guards, we will only draw unwanted attention to ourselves. It would make it look like we are the bad guys since everyone thinks they are real. There has to be a back door. There is no way a building this large could only have one entrance, Gary realized. There is a small alleyway off to the side. Maybe we can find another way in over there, Ash pointed out. The group made their way over to the side of the Silphco building and looked around. For such a grand building that Silphco was, it sure had a creepy alley. The group continued all the way to the back of the building and peered around the corner. As expected, there were a couple of guards at this entrance, too. The group figured they were also Team Rocket members in disguise. The difference here was there wasn't anyone around to see what the group was about to do. Pikachu, you know what to do, Ash whispered. The rodent silently nodded to Ash and went over to the guards and gave them an innocent expression. It then smiled and waved at them. What the heck? What is a Pikachu doing here? One of the disguised rockets muttered in confusion. Who cares? Beat it, you little rat. The other guard yelled. Seeing how Pikachu wasn't moving, the guards got angry. Heh. Since you aren't listening, we are going to have to hurt you, the second one growled. They pulled out some Pokeballs that were hidden from view, but Pikachu was faster. Pikachu you. The yellow rodent yelled as it gave them the shock of their life. The rocket guards were so startled, they didn't have time to cry out in pain before they were knocked out from the electric shocks. Great job, Pikachu, Ash praised as he and the other humans came out of hiding. Now let's get in there. He went to turn the doorknob but found it was locked. It wasn't that big of a surprise, however. They then felt around the knocked-out grunts' uniforms to see if they could find any keys but found none. That isn't any problem, Gary said. We can have our Pokemon help us knock down the door. I'm sure the workers at Silphco will forgive us since we have good intentions. Right, Ash agreed. They then released their Pokemon that could help break down the door. Ash released his Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur. Serena released Charla and Nidorina. Gary released his Wordle, his evolved Squirtle, Growlithe, and Nidorino. Diverting his attention from the other types of Pokemon Gary had, Ash ordered everyone to charge at the door at the same time. The people and Pokemon ran forward and rammed into the door with all their might. The good thing was the door was knocked loose, but the bad thing was that it also caused a loud crash as the door hit the ground. The group lost their balance and spilled into the room one by one, causing quite a commotion. The group groaned in pain as they got up from the floor. Once they recovered, they hastily returned their Pokemon and jumped to their feet. They quickly looked around or listened to see if anyone had heard or seen the loud crash. To their fortune, it seemed like the room was vacant at the moment. The room they were in was a small room with a few tables, chairs, and a small fountain in the middle. There were a few doors off to the side as well and a staircase and elevator that would lead upstairs. I think it would make sense for us to take the elevator to the top floor, Gary suggested. That is probably where the Team Rocket boss is at. There is no reason to take the stairs and face all of the rockets that are here. Good idea, Ash agreed. The group was just about to head for the elevator when they heard footsteps running down the stairs. It seemed like they had been heard after all when they broke in. They hurriedly ran through one of the nearby doors and discovered it was a janitor's closet. They all managed to get in the room and close the door just as the footsteps made it to the room. What the heck? What was that awful crashing noise down here? I could have sworn I heard something. One of the voices, a man, spoke. Look at that. Another voice exclaimed. The door has been busted down. Someone unwanted must be in here. We have an intruder. The group gave nervous glances at each other once the supposed rocket member said that. It seems things just got a whole lot worse now that they've been found out. They would have to be extra careful now that Team Rocket knew the Sylph Company had been infiltrated. They couldn't believe they forgot to put the door back in place. We need to inform the boss as fast as we can. Let's take the elevator. Send word to everyone to secure every single elevator in this building. Our little rat will be found. If they want to play around in this building, they are going to have to go through all of us first. One of the voices said to the other. Roger. The other one agreed. The group then listened for them to leave the room. They heard the elevator ding and the footsteps enter. The elevator closed, and then there was silence. The group quietly opened the door to the janitor's closet and entered back into the lobby, panting heavily. Great, Gary muttered. Now we can't even take the elevator. We really screwed up. Do you think it would be better if we left and came back in a little bit? Serena suggested. It's too late to turn back now, Ash said seriously. Team Rocket will no doubt be stepping up on security now. It would just be harder to come in if we came back later. We have to press on. We also have our Pokemon with us to protect us from danger. Right, Serena agreed. We'll just need to be extra careful from now on. It will take more than a few rocket grunts to stop us, Gary said as they made their way to their staircase. After stopping to listen, they heard no noises or voices nearby and decided it was now safe to go up the staircase. They crept up the staircase as quietly as they could but still prepared for the worst. It would be naive to think their trek up to the 11th floor would go undetected since the rockets were now aware of their arrival. They entered the second floor from the staircase which led into a very long hallway with many doors off to the side. They sighed when they realized that their journey to the top floor would be made even harder now. Silphco was a regular maze. While there is nobody here, we need to figure our best course of action from here on out, Gary suggested. What did you have in mind? Ash asked quietly. I remember the secretary saying that the workers were all being forced to perfect the master ball and are under strict watch. I say we rescue the workers first before heading up to the top floor, Gary explained. We don't have any clues on where the workers are being kept, though, Serena pointed out. That's true. We are going to have to look for clues while we are here. My guess would be most of them are in the lab part of the building. I've heard that it was on the 8th floor, Gary recalled. Then I say we get there as quick as possible. Let's just be careful, Ash suggested. The group nodded to each other as they crept as quietly as they could down the hallway. Unbeknownst to them, there was a tiny security camera in the corner watching their every move. The group passed through the second floor without any incident. They eventually found another staircase and moved up to the third floor. They couldn't help but think there was something up with their trek up the Silphco going uninterrupted. They were starting to feel a little nervous. Ash, I'm starting to get a little scared. There is no way we should still be able to continue on without incident so far, Serena said nervously. I say we count our blessings, Ash mumbled as they continued along the third floor hallway. Pikachu nodded its head in agreement. I wouldn't be so sure, Ash, Gary said seriously. They may be doing this on purpose. We have to expect the worst. Like what? Ash asked curiously. An ambush, Gary replied. Just keep your pokeballs within arm's reach because things could turn south quickly. As they rounded the corner, they saw 3 rocket grunts, 2 males and 1 female, guarding the 4th floor staircase. Our first obstruction, Ash muttered. I think we can take them. The rocket grunts noticed the children and immediately reached for their pokeballs. They sent out a Golbat, a Grimer, and a Raticate while Gary sent out his Wordle, Serena used Charla, and Ash used Pikachu. The Pokemon went back and forth trading blows with each other, but Team Rocket's Pokemon were no match for Ash's, Serena's, and Gary's Pokemon. Ash then ordered Pikachu to use Thundershock to knock the grunts out before they could get away. That was a little too easy, Gary said as the group looked at the unconscious grunts. I'm still uneasy about all of this. There has to be a better way to get around this place. Serena studied the rocket grunts carefully and noticed there was the same number of males and females as there were with their group. A thought, albeit a little unpleasant, came to her. Hey guys. I have an idea, Serena spoke up. About 10 minutes later, Ash, Serena, and Gary came out of a nearby closet wearing the uniforms of the Team Rocket members they just defeated. The real Rockets were kept in the closet so they wouldn't be discovered. Ash had Pikachu hidden in his backpack. These disguises are perfect. Aside from our age, we look just like Team Rocket members, Ash said. Yep. Now going to the top floor should be much easier from now on, Serena agreed. Once the group made it to the 4th floor, they noticed a drastic change in the layout of the Silphco building. Instead of a maze of hallways and doors, they were now met with a very large room with various machines around. There were also quite few Rocket members who were standing over what were presumably Silph employees while they tirelessly worked. The group was about to continue on when they heard a voice shout out to them. Hey! You 3! What the heck do you think you are doing over there? The group froze and looked in the direction of the voice and saw a Rocket member approaching them from across the room. Unlike any Rocket grunt they've seen so far, the man coming towards them seemed to hold an air of authority around him. He was a tall man with slanted eyes and green hair with a bit of blue to it. It was rather hard to see the style of it because it was mostly covered by his hat. "What is it?" Ash asked stupidly before he was elbowed by Gary. "Excuse me. Is that how you speak to an executive?" the man asked angrily once he reached them. "I mean, what is it, sir?" Ash corrected. "What is it, Sir Proton?" The man emphasized the last word. "Sorry. What is it, Sir Proton?" Ash asked again as he began to sweat bullets. "That's a little better," the rocket known as Proton answered with a scowl. "As I was saying, what are you three doing slacking off? Didn't the boss give all you grunts strict orders to either be watching out for our intruders or overseeing production of the master ball?" "Yes, Sir Proton," Gary answered. "You see, we've just received orders from another executive to give a very important message to the boss." "Is that so?" Proton asked as he crossed his arms and glared. "Yes, Sir Proton," Gary answered, hoping the rocket executive would believe them. Proton studied the four for a moment as if trying to determine if they were telling the truth. Ash, Serena, and Gary tried to keep their expressions as neutral as possible despite how nervous they were. After what seemed like an eternity, Proton gave his response. "Fine," he said as he nodded. "Just make sure to hurry back to your posts." He then added, "I swear the boss must have been high on something when he allowed you kids to join Team Rocket. We are supposed to be a world-class criminal organization, not a daycare." "Thank you, Sir Proton," Serena replied as they left his presence and continued on, but were stopped by Proton calling out to them again. "Don't you dare tell the boss I said that or else. You know how scary and cruel I can be when I'm angry," he yelled. The group nodded as they hurried off, eager to get away from this Proton guy. He was already scary enough as it was without being angry. As Proton watched the three go with a scowl on his face, it soon turned into an evil grin once they were out of sight. He turned to the other grunts in the room who were now also staring back at him with equally evil grins on their faces. Proton then pressed a button on a communicator that was attached to his wrist and spoke into it. "Archer, our little rats have just left the 4th floor. Are our preparations complete for the ambush on the 8th floor?" he asked. "Yes," came a deep voice from the other end. "Everyone is in place." "Good," Proton answered. He then added, "You know, as I was studying their appearances, one of them fit the description of that Ash Ketchum boy we've heard about lately. There was also a blonde-haired girl with him who has been reported as one of his companions. I didn't see a Pikachu with him, but I'd wager it was hiding in that backpack of his." "Really? The same Ash Ketchum the boss has taken an interest in?" Archer asked. "The very same," Proton nodded in the affirmative. "Oh, this is just too perfect. They won't know what hit them. We are going to eliminate those brats once and for all." Chapter 27, The Sylph Company Part 2. Brock, Misty, and the secretary were running through Saffron City as fast as they could. Despite the speed at which they were running, the police station was still on the other side of the city, so it would still take them a while to get there. They just hoped they weren't too late and Ash, Serena, and Gary were okay. Were they even able to get inside the Sylph Co building? As they were running to the police station, they happened to pass by the Saffron City gym. They came to a stop for a brief moment as a thought occurred to Brock. "Hey guys. Do you think it would be a good idea to let the gym leader know of the situation?" Brock asked. "I'm not sure that is such a good idea," the secretary warned. "The gym leader, Sabrina, is no doubt a very strong trainer, but she is also a very cold girl. It would be hard to get her to listen to reason, even though the whole city is in danger," Misty exclaimed. "It has nothing to do with her not wanting to care. The fact is she is emotionally unable to care," the secretary replied. What do you mean? Brock asked. Sabrina is, I'll explain later. We have to continue to hurry to the police station, the secretary reminded. The three then continued to run. As they left, Brock and Misty kept taking several glances back towards the gym, both wondering the same thing. How could a gym leader be so cold and emotionless to not care about a major problem in her own city? Everything seems to be going okay so far. Everybody seems to be fooled by our disguises, Ash said as they continued through the large building that was Silphco. Chew, Pikachu muttered as it poked its head a few inches out of Ash's backpack. You need to stay in the backpack, buddy. We don't need to draw unwanted attention to ourselves, Ash whispered. We are already halfway up the building. The rockets have been surprisingly helpful in directing us to the upper floors when we need help, Gary mused. Is that too strange for you? Serena asked. Yes. It is, in fact, Gary answered. With the exception of that proton guy, nobody is suspicious of us at all. We've learned from them that the experiments for the Master Ball are still being conducted on the 8th floor. Once we reach there, we should be able to obtain some valuable information about exactly what Team Rocket is trying to do with the Master Ball, Ash said. Well, we are on the 7th floor right now, so it won't be too much longer. Hopefully, we will be able to surprise the rockets and rescue the workers before heading to the top floor to rescue the president, Serena commented. The group of three then headed up the stairs to the 8th floor. With exception of the 4th floor, all the floors had just been a maze of hallways and doors to the side. If what the rockets had said were true, most of the workers were on the floor just above them. As they went up the stairs, the security camera was still watching everything they did. Once the group entered the 8th floor, they were very surprised. It was certainly a large lab area like they had expected, and there were many workers tied up all over the big room with tape over their mouths. The strange part was there wasn't a single rocket member in sight. I don't get it. Where is everyone? Serena asked in confusion as they looked around the room. This definitely looks suspicious, Gary muttered. We should be careful and, Ash. What are you doing? I'm freeing these workers. What else? Ash responded as he left Serena and Gary and ran over to the workers. We should think about this more logically. Gary called. Let's free these Sylph workers first. Ash argued before he pulled the tape off the mouths of one of the workers. As soon as the employee's tape was removed from his mouth, he shouted. Get of here. Hurry. It's a trap. What? Ash asked in confusion. Ash. Behind you. Serena yelled. Ash spun around just in time to see a club coming towards his head. The club connected, and Ash immediately began to feel dizzy. He saw it was a rocket member who had a devious smirk on his face had been the culprit. He looked familiar, but Ash was too tired to remember who it was. As his eyelids began to droop, he noticed at least 30 rocket grunts surrounding Serena and Gary, while 3 other rockets, 2 men and 1 woman, appeared to be giving orders. That was the last thing Ash saw before he collapsed, and everything turned to darkness. Ash groaned as he groggily opened his eyes. His eyesight was very blurry still and he couldn't really see a thing. How long had he been knocked out? The back of his head still hurt a lot. Ash went to feel his head to see if there was a bump there, but found he was unable to move his arms. Now awake, he realized that his was tied up. He then noticed Serena and Gary next to him, also tied up. They both appeared to be unconscious. With growing panic, Ash realized they had fallen right into Team Rocket's trap, and it was his fault. If only he hadn't been so reckless. It was then Ash decided to look around and assess the situation they were in. They were in a seated position with their arms tied up just like they were at the power plant a while back. They certainly couldn't break free themselves. He then looked around the room they were in, taking in its features. It was fairly small and appeared to be pretty bare aside from a table and a few chairs. This must be just an extra room that served no real purpose for Silphko. Now that he had fully gotten his senses back, Ash immediately grew alarmed as he wondered what could have happened to his Pokemon. He could move his fingers just enough to be able to feel his Pokeballs weren't on his belt. He frantically looked around the room and noticed their backpacks and Pokeballs against the wall on the opposite side of the room. What really got his attention was his best buddy Pikachu, tied up and in a cage so it couldn't use its electric attacks. "Pikachu!" Ash called, but got no response from the rodent, so it must be unconscious as well. Ash sighed when he realized he must be the only one awake at the moment. A thought then suddenly came to Ash that made him extremely uneasy. Why would Team Rocket leave their backpacks and Pokemon in the same room they were in? Why not relocate them? Ash may have been reckless so far, but he wasn't naive enough to think Team Rocket simply left their Pokemon in the same room out of carelessness. Something was up. Ash was snapped out his thoughts as he heard footsteps approaching the door. He heard the sound of keys jingling and the lock soon turned. The door then opened to reveal 3 Rocket grunts coming into the room carrying buckets of ice water. 2 appeared unfamiliar to Ash, but he immediately got a glare on his face when he saw that the third one was one of his least favorite people on the face of the planet. Now that he had his senses back, Ash could see it was this person who had knocked him out. Well. Long time no see. How's Charmander? Damien sneered. You? Ash uttered in a low tone. Yes. It's me. The one and only Damien. Allow me to say hello after such a long time, Damien said with a smirk. He then went over and kicked Ash in the face as hard as he could. Blood splattered from Ash's nose once Damien's foot came in contact with his face. Ash yelled in pain from the kick before he glared up again at Damien. His nose felt like it was on fire as blood continued to stream from it. That was payback for when you punched me, you little punk. Damien yelled angrily with his fists clenched. I hate you, Ash growled. The feeling's mutual, but I have the upper hand right now, so you might want to choose your words carefully around me, Damien smirked. His gaze then turned to Gary and Serena, who were still knocked out. I guess we better go ahead and wake these 2 up. The 2 other Rocket members threw their ice water all over Gary and Serena while Damien dumped his on Ash just to spite him. Gary and Serena instantly snapped awake once the water was flung on them and began shivering violently. Where are we? Serena stuttered before she noticed they were all tied up. We were captured thanks to Ash's recklessness. If he would have listened to me, we might have been able to avoid the ambush, Gary muttered, but he was also shaking from the cold. Ash heard those words and grimaced. Those words really stung, but Gary was right. Despite all the times of danger Ash had been through, his recklessness was the one thing Ash had not gotten any better at. Now they were captured by Team Rocket, who held a massive grudge against them, so who knows what could happen. Serena then looked to see who the culprits were who had thrown the ice water on them and gasped when she saw Damien, who gave a vicious smile in return. Hey, sweet cakes. How have you been? Damien asked arrogantly. Sweet cakes? Serena questioned with disgust. All of you look much better when you are cowering before us. You know we are going to torture all of you, don't you? Damien reminded. What do you mean? Gary asked. I've never met you, so you may not know this, but these 2 are proclaimed enemies of Team Rocket. There isn't a single member in the organization who doesn't know about them, Damien answered. What? Why those 2? Gary asked in confusion with his eyebrows raised. They are always ruining Team Rocket's plans. Even before I joined, they always got in Jesse, James, and Meowth's way. Damien hollered before turning to Ash and Serena. By the way, those three, Cassidy, and Biff will be over here later to give you a little payback of their own. Ash and Serena grimaced when they heard that. You two have been getting mixed up with Team Rocket since you started your journey. These guys are a criminal organization. What are you thinking? Gary exclaimed in surprise as he glared at the two. We aren't doing it on purpose. Ash defended. It isn't like we go searching for these guys. We always just happen to be in the same place they are. This is the first time we have deliberately tried to stop them. Whether you're seeking us out or not doesn't matter. You still will get what's coming for you, starting with the girl, Damien said as he went to stand over her. He leered evilly at her, which caused Serena to cower in fear. Don't you dare touch Serena, you creep. Ash exploded. I swear if you harm her, You'll what? Damien smirked as he reared back his fist to strike Serena, but stopped. He then turned to their backpacks and Pikachu, who was still slumped against the wall. Actually, I'm thinking we torture your Pokemon a little first. There is no doubt you want front row seats to that. You're as low as they come. Gary spat. First you try to hit a girl, and now you want to torture our Pokemon. Don't touch our Pokemon. Ash yelled. Or else what? Damien glared as he and the other two Rockets went over to their backpacks. He then began shuffling through Ash's backpack until he found the one he wanted. He then picked it up and held it out in front of him. Charmander's Pokeball, Ash trailed. It sure is. I'll be taking back what is rightfully mine. Thank you. Damien said arrogantly. But first I think I will teach it a lesson for defying me. He then pressed the center button and released Charmander from its Pokeballs. Charmander looked up, expecting to see Ash, but its eyes grew wide with horror when it saw it. Was its former trainer. Hello, Charmander, Damien smirked as she put his hands on his hips. Charmander looked over to where Ash, Serena, and Gary were tied up. It went over to try to help to them, but Damien gave it hard kick before it could even get 2 steps in. Charmander was sent flying across the room and hit the wall painfully. It slowly stood up and prepared to use flamethrower on Damien and the other Rockets, but Damien already had his other Pokemon out, a Machoke, an Exeggutor, and a Cloyster. All 3 Pokemon loomed over Charmander and stared down menacingly at it. I told you that you would regret going against me, didn't I? Damien growled. I'll be teaching you a lesson you will never forget. Then let's see if you will disobey me again. I'm going to hurt you so terribly, you won't be battling for months. Don't you dare hurt Charmander. Ash shouted. Shut up. Damien hollered back. You'll get your turn after Charmander and the rest of your Pokemon. He then turned back to Charmander and gave it an evil smile. I'm going to enjoy this. Charmander continued to stare fearfully at the Pokemon in front of it before Damien ordered his Pokemon to attack. Machoke was first as it rushed forward and pinned Charmander to the wall by its throat so it couldn't move. Charmander tried to bite Machoke's arm but couldn't reach it. It was unable to use its fire attacks also since Machoke was almost choking it with its unforgiving arm. It then reeled back and delivered a hard punch to Charmander's stomach, causing the poor Pokemon to gasp in pain as the wind was knocked from it. Charmander! No! Ash screamed as Serena and Gary gasped at the brutality of the attack. Pikachu had been awoken by the noise. It looked around and saw that it was in a cage. It tried to use Thunder Shock, but it was no good. It then saw the predicament all of its friends were in, especially Charmander. It gasped and began to cry out in worry as it continued to release Thunder Shocks in a vain effort to try to break free from the cage. Hey! Pipe down, you little rat! One of the rocket members snarled as he went over and rattled the cage violently. Pikachu was thrown around, knocking against the bars many times. Once the rocket grunt was finished, he threw the cage against the wall where Pikachu was slammed into it due to the force. The cage fell to the ground and Pikachu was covered with various bumps and bruises. Pikachu! Ash cried before glaring in hatred at the rocket member who did that to it. Pikachu shakily stood to its feet and nodded at Ash to let him know that it would be okay for now. By then, Machoke had delivered another punch to Charmander's gut as the fire lizard gasped in pain once again. Stop doing that. You don't deserve to call yourself a Pokemon trainer or even a human being. Gary yelled. I can do whatever I very well feel like. In fact, I think I will give a little torture to your Pokemon as well. Damien said with an evil grin. Don't you even think about it? Gary yelled. It was then Machoke stood to the side to give its comrades a chance to attack Charmander. It still had Charmander pinned with its arms. Exeggutor was next as it began to sprinkle an excess amount of stun spore all over Charmander. The Pokemon grit its teeth at the torturing powder and began to sweat profusely. Exeggutor then began to ram Charmander's lower body quite brutally with its coconut heads. Knock it off! Ash screamed, but Damien ignored him. Exeggutor then stood back as Cloyster began to shoot continuous streams of water at the Pokemon, causing it to scream in pain at the super effective attack. Cloyster then began to clamp down continuously on Charmander with its spiky shell. Chaaar! Charmander screamed in agony. Ash felt tears burn his eyes as he watched the sadistic teenager torture Charmander right in front of him, and he was powerless to stop it. Serena and Gary had forced their eyes shut and turned away from the scene. They couldn't bear to watch anymore. By the time the savage Pokemon were finished, Charmander was in horrible shape. Its tail flame was very low and it was bleeding and hurting everywhere. It closed its eyes so might be able to rest, but Damien wasn't going to let that happen. Hey! Stay awake. You listen when I'm talking to you. Damien snarled as Machoke punched Charmander across the face to keep it awake. Charmander cast a weak glance over to its current trainer, Ash. He had tears streaming down his eyes as he saw how it was being tortured. Ash had definitely been the best trainer Charmander could ask for. He was as kind and understanding as they come. Ash always treated it with love and kindness. It had even grown to befriend all of Ash's other Pokemon, as well. One wrong move had cost it to be back in Damien's hands, but Charmander would be darned if it stayed with Damien. There was no way on earth it was being taken from Ash to go back to him. I say you all give it a pain Charmander will never forget by attacking it together, Damien uttered to his Pokemon, who nodded in response. Don't do it! Ash cried, but Damien didn't listen. Cloyster and Exeggutor charged forward while Machoke reared back its fist again. All three Pokemon slammed their attacks into the poor Pokemon at the same time. Charmander felt unimaginable pain as the larger Pokemon rammed into it with their attacks. Unable to bear the pain anymore, it slumped over completely. Its tail flame was almost out. Machoke then let go of Charmander, who fell like a dead weight to the ground. It wasn't moving. No. Charmander, Ash began to cry. He couldn't understand how anyone on the planet could be this cruel. Serena began to cry as well as she saw Charmander's critical state. Even the arrogant Gary Oak felt tears well up in his eyes as he saw Charmander lying there almost lifelessly. I say we get him back just as hard, Damien muttered as he pointed at Ash. His Pokemon then loomed over Ash and gave him the same sinister look they had given Charmander. Pika-Pi Pikachu! Pikachu yelled once it saw the danger its trainer was in. Serena began to tear up again, but this time because of Ash. She couldn't bear the thought of Ash being tortured. She would take the place of her crush any day. She began to struggle against her ropes in a vain attempt to break free. Charmander continued to lie there motionlessly. It was in unbelievable pain right now. It cracked its eyes open and saw Ash, Serena, and Gary completely helpless as Damien's Pokémon prepared to attack. It saw Pikachu yelling frantically in desperation for its trainer. Charmander may have taken a beating from its former trainer, but it wasn't going to let him harm Ash. It will not. It then felt a power grow inside of it that it hadn't felt before. It was a desire to protect its trainer, a desire to not let Damien get away with doing the things he does any longer. Nobody seemed to notice that its tail flame began to get larger and its eyes began to possess a look that Charmander never had before. Well, what are you three Pokémon waiting for? Attack that punk! Damien ordered. His Pokémon were about to lunge at Ash but were distracted by a powerful flame that completely engulfed them, greatly surprising everyone in the room. Once the attack was finished, Damien's Pokémon, as well as everyone else, turned in shock at where the flame had come from. Charmander was on its feet as it glared at Damien for trying to harm Ash. Its flame was burning larger than it had ever burned before. It was even larger than it was when Blaze was activated. It then began to glow a shiny white. What is this? Damien exclaimed as he watched what was taking place. Charmander's evolving, Ash muttered as he, Serena, and Gary looked in awe. Like Charla had before it, Charmander began to grow larger and grew a horn in the back of its head and was now red in color. The glowing stopped as Charmander had now evolved into a Charmeleon. It gave an intense glare at the three rockets, in particular to Damien. Its tail flame was still burning unbelievably intense. Char, it growled deeply. Heh, you think I'm afraid of you just because you evolved. It seems you need another lesson in pain. Machop, Cloyster, Executor. Attack that Pokémon even harder than last time. The three Pokémon lunged at Charmeleon, but it didn't seem worried in the least. In fact, if it was possible, its tail flame would have become larger. Charmeleon gave a mighty roar and let out the largest flamethrower attack anyone in the room had ever seen. The Pokémon dropped to the ground like flies in utter defeat. That's amazing, Ash said in awe. I didn't even know a Charmeleon could have that kind of power. It's using rage. That's Charmeleon's most powerful attack, Gary told him, in equal shock of Charmeleon's strength. Once Damien and the other rockets saw how easily Charmeleon had defeated their Pokémon, their smirks immediately changed to a look of horror. Ehehehe. Nice Charmeleon. We were just playing, Damien said nervously as he and the other rockets began to back up. Charmeleon continued to intensely glare at him. Seeing as Charmeleon didn't look so forgiving, Damien and the rockets turned around and began to try to make a run for it, but Charmeleon was quicker. It let loose another monstrous flamethrower at the rockets, making sure to scorch Damien the most. All three humans screamed in pain as Charmeleon continued to burn them. The attack finally ended, and the larger fire lizard had a look of satisfaction on its face. Damien and the other two rockets were charred completely black and fell over onto the ground, unmoving. Holy cow, Ash muttered at the situation that had just taken place. Charmeleon then ran over to Ash, Serena, and Gary and cut their ropes loose with its sharp claws. It then went over to unlock Pikachu from its cage. As soon as the yellow rodent was free, it ran over to Ash and jumped in his arms. Buddy! Ash cried in delight as he gave it a hug. He then looked at Charmeleon. I'm so sorry I wasn't able to protect you from Damien, Charmeleon. Do forgive me. Charmeleon nodded its head and gave a thumbs up at Ash as its tail flame returned to normal. The raven hair boy then went over to the fire lizard and gave it a hug as well. Congratulations on evolving, Charmeleon. I'm so glad you're okay. I was so scared of what might have happened to you when I saw Damien attacking you like that. Char, it said reassuringly. I just want to let you know that we will always be together, Charmeleon. I will never let you go to a trainer like Damien ever again, Ash said. Thank you for everything, Charmeleon, Serena said as she hugged the Pokemon, too. Ash then decided to switch topics as he looked over at the three scorched bodies. Gary was checking their pulses. Well, they are definitely still alive, but I don't see them recovering anytime soon, especially Damien. If he does recover, I don't think it will be completely. He will probably be disfigured for the rest of his life because of how burned he is, Gary reported. We should probably continue on and worry about them later. We still have to rescue the president, Ash reminded. Remember to be careful this time. This building is still full of Team Rocket members, and I don't wish to be captured again, Gary said. Right, Ash agreed as he and everyone else left the room. Before he left, he looked over at the scorched body of Damien, the cruel boy who had tortured Charmander, called it worthless, and called Serena a horrible name. With the horrible shape Damien appeared to be in, Ash almost felt sorry for him despite how terrible a person Damien was. Seeing Damien lying there like that, completely motionless, and because it had been Charmander, no, Charmeleon who did, Ash felt closure with Damien. He didn't feel like he would run into Damien for a very long time after this, if ever. He sighed and followed Gary, Serena, Pikachu, and Charmeleon out of the room. Once again, the group had a security camera that was monitoring their every move. To say that the Team Rocket executives were surprised at the events they had seen on the camera was an understatement. Those kids had escaped from their bondages again. They gave Damien and those two other grunts the simple task to watch over those brats, and they would deal with them later. Yet they still managed to break free. This was an outrage. How is it those little kids are so strong? This is very unsettling, a woman with red hair and a haughty expression muttered as she saw the group leave the room via the control room on the 10th floor. Indeed it is, Ariana, a tall man with short green hair in a white uniform agreed. We should have dealt with these children while we had the chance. We should inform the boss of this and ask about the next course of action. He certainly isn't going to be pleased, Archer, a hunched man with purple hair that stuck up in the middle said. There isn't anything else we can do, Petrel, Archer replied. He then turned on his wrist communicator and spoke into it. Sir, this is Archer. What is it this time, Archer? I hope this is good news, spoke Giovanni. Archer was visibly nervous upon hearing that. Unfortunately, sir, it is more bad news. The rats that we captured have escaped their bondages and are free again. They overpowered the grunts we sent to keep watch on them. What? Again? Giovanni shouted. How is it those idiots can't take care of a couple of children? With all due respect, sir, these children are much stronger than they seem. They have been able to take down everyone in their path so far, Archer replied. It doesn't matter whether they make it up to me or not anymore, Giovanni said darkly. We have gotten the information we needed about the Master Ball to make one of our own. Those children still need to be taught a lesson, however, for meddling in our affairs. Please, sir. Let us executives take care of the brats. They may be able to defeat grunts but will be no match for us, Archer suggested. I have a better idea, the rocket boss said. Bring them to me. I would like to speak with them personally, particularly this Ash Ketchum I hear so much about. Yes, sir, Archer replied before turning off the communicator. Luckily, the group hadn't run into any more ambushes since the one of the 8th floor. They have only had minor skirmishes with a few rockets. They weren't going to be so easily fooled now, however. They were taking no chances. We are almost back up to the 8th floor, guys, Ash reported. Do you think they know of our escape and have something else planned? Without a doubt. I bet they are watching our every move right now, somehow, Gary responded. Why aren't they sending out any ambushes again? Serena asked. Who knows, but I bet you they are planning something, Gary said as they reached the 8th floor. Once again, the group saw many workers who were tied up with tape over their mouths. It looked just like the last time the group was up here. Surely they wouldn't try the same thing twice in a row, Ash commented. Of course not, Gary agreed. I say we free the workers but do it very slowly and keep our eyes peeled. Right, Ash responded. The group was about to step forward to free the workers but were stopped by a voice. You will do no such thing. The group turned to see 4 Team Rocket members walking towards them, 3 men and 1 woman. Ash immediately recognized one of them as the executive they encountered on the 4th floor, Proton. It took him a moment to place the other 3, but he then remembered they were the Rockets giving the grunts orders just before he was knocked out on this floor. The group learned it had been the woman who had called out to them just now. The 3 immediately reached for their poke balls, but Archer stopped them by holding out his hand. Hold on. We aren't going to fight you. What? Ash asked in confusion. We have been given orders to take you straight to our boss, Archer explained as he and the other executives reached them. Yeah. I'm a nice guy. That's why we are doing this, Petrol said. You're taking us straight to your leader with no opposition? Why? Serena asked suspiciously. You brats have awoken an anger that can't be quenched within us. I would like nothing more than to unleash the full power of a Team Rocket executive's wrath on you, but the boss is forbidding it, Proton said as he clenched his fists. Settle down, Proton, Ariana told him. She then turned back to the trio. Are you coming or not? Why on earth should we trust you? Gary asked. You've tried to have us killed. How do we know you aren't leading us to a trap? Our boss said he just wants to talk with you. On the other hand, if you refuse, we can simply crush you here, Archer said. The group then looked around and noticed several more Team Rocket members coming out of hiding places and surrounding the group. I knew it, Gary muttered. It was another ambush. This isn't an ambush because we are giving you a choice, Ariana said. You want to get to the top floor, correct? We are offering to take you there without any opposition. Ash sighed. Guys. I hate to say it, but it doesn't look like we have any better options. I say we let them take us to the top floor. Are you serious, Ash? Surely you can't trust their word. Gary exclaimed. Do you see any other options, Gary? Ash asked sternly as he gestured at the several rockets surrounding them. Do you think we can take all of these guys on our own? Gary didn't have a response for that. If you say so, I trust your judgment, Ash, Serena said. Seeing as no one was arguing with him anymore, Ash nodded to the 4 rocket executives. Okay. Please take us to your leader, he said. Archer nodded back once. Very well. Let's go. The group then began to follow the executives through 8th floor, exchanging nervous glances with each other and wondering what the Team Rocket boss had in store for them. They continued through the other upper floors with no trouble whatsoever. Any rockets they passed merely saluted the executives or looked on in confusion. It seemed like the rocket executives were keeping their word. They soon arrived at the entrance to the 11th floor and were met by some very familiar faces. You guys. Ash said in surprise. Chuyuo. Pikachu growled. Meowth. What are you twerps doing here? You were supposed to be captured. Meowth exclaimed. Such dreadful twerps. We'll show you how wrong it is to keep meddling in our affairs. James shouted as he, Jesse, Butch, and Cassidy reached for their pokeballs. Stand down. They are with us, Ariana told them. You're actually taking them to the boss? Butch asked in confusion. Why? Don't ask questions. Just do as we say. The boss wants to speak with them personally. Proton growled. Yes, Sir Proton. All 5 of them saluted as they hastily moved out of the way, not wanting to anger any of their executives. As the group passed them, Jessie reached out her foot to trip Serena on her way by. Serena stumbled and almost lost her balance, but Ash caught her just in time. He and Serena glared at Jessie while she and her comrades glared back, but the executive stepped in. Don't try our patience anymore. We are angry enough as it is, Archer threatened. The 4 Rockets and Meowth continued to glare at their twerps before finally averting their gazes and looking ahead again to keep watch. The 4 executives and the group then went up the stairs that lead to the very top floor where the president was being held captive. Ugh. I can't believe we had to just let those brats walk by us like that. Can you believe this, Biff? Cassidy scowled once they were out of sight. My name is Butch, not Biff, Butch muttered. Once the group made it onto the top floor, they were met with a long hallway with a few doors to the side and one at the end, which was presumably the president's office. They passed by the secretary's office on their way through the hallway and thought of where Brock and Misty could be. Surely they almost had to be here. This situation was a lot scarier than they thought it would be. They hoped their friends and police would arrive soon. Reaching the top floor had been their goal the entire time since they entered the building. However, now that they were here, the group was very apprehensive. Ash, I'm a little scared, Serena whispered as she grabbed onto his arm for support. It will be okay, Ash assured as he reached over with his opposite hand to rub Serena's arm in a comforting manner. Once they arrived at the door to the president's office, Archer walked over and knocked lightly 3 times to wait for a response. Who is it? Came the dark voice of Giovanni from the other end. It's us, sir. We brought the intruders as you requested, Archer answered. Very well. Send them in, Giovanni responded. Archer opened the door and allowed the group to enter. Ash, Serena, and Gary walked past him and took in their surroundings. The first thing they noticed was an older man with a terrified and worried look behind his desk. That was who they presumed to be the president. Then their eyes met with a tall man in an orange suit who was sitting on the couch, cross-legged and stroking a Persian by his side. He had to be the rocket leader. This man seemed to be a lot more sophisticated than they thought a leader of a criminal gang should be. Thank you, Archer, Giovanni said to his executive. Then he addressed the others, Petrol, go get the helicopter ready. The rest of you may wait outside the door. I will call you when needed. Ash, Serena, and Gary thought it was very bold of Giovanni to talk to them alone. He must not be afraid of them at all, not that he had a reason to be. The executives nodded before leaving the room and closing the door behind them. The group knew they had no choice but to talk to the boss now that their exit had been blocked. Oh, this is awful. I can't believe the people I heard who attempted to rescue Silphco were children. I'm so ashamed, the president moaned sadly. Giovanni's Persian hissed at the man, which immediately drove him into silence. Giovanni then looked at Ash appraisingly. Would your name happen to Ash Ketchum, young man, and the young lady next to you Serena Gabina? He asked. Yes. How did you know our names? Ash asked uneasily. How could I not? You all have been a thorn in Team Rocket's side for a very long time now, Giovanni responded calmly before solely addressing Gary. There is no need to ask who you are. You are Gary Oak, son of Blue Oak, and grandson of Professor Samuel Oak. Gary wished for once that his family wasn't so famous. His father was the champion of the Kanto region and his grandfather was the authority on Pokemon. Everybody knew of him as a result by just looking at his face. He was the spitting image of his father. Giovanni then added a slight venom in his voice directed at Ash. Your name, I get so angry every time I hear it. It reminds me of a time in my past that I don't have happy memories of. My name? Have I met you before? Ash inquired in confusion. No, not personally, but I do know all about you, Giovanni responded. Team Rocket has spies all across the region. We've been keeping tabs on you and your friends ever since Celadon City. I thought your last name was just a coincidence when I first heard it. However, once I learned about you, I knew for sure exactly who you were. It's almost fitting. How you would be the one to get in my way. I don't get it. What do you know about me? I've never heard of you or Team Rocket until I started my journey. Ash argued. I would like to ask you, why do you keep interfering in our business? You certainly are a meddlesome child. Giovanni asked instead, choosing not to answer Ash's question. Because what you guys do is wrong. Ash shouted. I don't care if I'm just a kid. I can't allow you guys to commit the crimes you do using Pokemon. Heh heh. Pokemon are nothing more than tools used to meet ends, Giovanni responded, which made Pikachu growl. The Persian didn't seem to mind Giovanni's words. Pokemon are our friends and partners. That's a very twisted way of thinking. Ash shouted. Ash. Serena trailed as she placed her hand on his right shoulder to calm him down. Giovanni was an exceptionally intimidating man. My. What a brave one you are, just like your father, Giovanni smirked. My father? Ash asked in total surprise. That was a person whom he hadn't heard about in a long time. You really don't know anything, do you? Giovanni chuckled. Tell me, young man. Are you aiming to enter the Pokemon League? Yes. Why are you asking me a question like that? Ash answered uneasily. Heh. It will certainly be interesting to battle you in due time, Giovanni smiled darkly. What do you mean? Ash asked. You will know soon enough, Giovanni responded. Why did you want to take over Silphco in the first place? Gary asked, wanting to change the subject away from Ash. You children sure are full of questions, aren't you? Giovanni remarked as he crossed his arms. If you must know, we need the Master Ball. So you can capture any Pokemon you please, right? Ash scowled. No. We would not go through all of this trouble to get our hands on the ultimate Pokeball for just any Pokemon, Giovanni replied. Then why? Serena asked. Have you three ever heard of Mewtwo? Giovanni inquired. Both Ash and Serena remained silent, never having heard of it before, but Gary had. I have. My Gramps has mentioned it to me. I've heard rumors that it has been an experiment researchers have worked on by cloning the Pokemon Mew's DNA, he responded. What? Cloning the legendary Pokemon, Mew? Ash and Serena exclaimed. Giovanni got up from the couch and walked over to the window with his hands behind his back and looked out towards the city, his back to the group. It's not just a rumor. It's very true. We plan to use the Master Ball to capture that Pokemon and bring it under our control. With such a powerful Pokemon at our disposal, it won't be long until Team Rocket controls the world. Giovanni proclaimed with an evil grin, his look reflecting in the glass towards the group. We aren't going to let you get away with that. We will stop you. Ash yelled. Giovanni let out an evil chuckle and turned back to the group. Children like you stop me? You clearly don't know whom you are dealing with. The Persian hissed threateningly at Ash, but he didn't care. You seem to be a very powerful trainer, Ash, Giovanni commented. If you are interested, I could offer you a place on Team Rocket. Your friends as well. We'll never join the likes of you. Ash shouted. I thought you might say that, but don't say I was never generous enough to offer. Bad things happen to people who keep getting in Team Rocket's way, Giovanni said. Dangerously. I'm not afraid of you. Ash shouted again. You should be. It would be most unfortunate to hear something bad happen to your mother, Delia, if you don't stay out of our way, Giovanni threatened. Don't threaten my mother, Ash uttered in a low tone, ignoring the fact that Giovanni knew of his mom, also. His fists were clenched and his teeth were gritted. He felt what was like a small spark deep in his soul, but he ignored it. Did I hit a nerve, Ash Ketchum? Giovanni mocked. Leave my family out of this, Ash growled. They have nothing to do with this. Oh, they have much more to do with this than you think, Giovanni said with a knowing smirk. What are you talking about? Ash asked in complete confusion. What did his parents have to do with Team Rocket? Yeah. Gary and I have known Ash for years. His family never had anything to do with Team Rocket. Serena yelled. This goes farther back than just the so-called years you have known Ash, Giovanni responded. Giovanni's Persian got up from its sitting position and began to take slow steps towards the group while hissing dangerously. Team Rocket can't have children who keep getting in our way, particularly you three, Giovanni said as he narrowed his eyes. I think it's time we taught you all a lesson for meddling with us far too long. Giovanni then reached for his pokeballs. Ash, Serena, and Gary did the same. Proton, Ariana, and Archer burst into the room and also had their pokeballs drawn. The three looked around at all the Rocket members surrounding them while the president watched helplessly. They didn't want to admit it, but the odds looked pretty bad. Pikachu, are you ready? Ash asked, to which the Pikachu nodded in response and sparked its cheeks. Ash. Serena trailed worriedly. Just stay by me, Serena. I won't let them harm you, Ash reassured. It looked like a major fight was going to break out between the heroes and Rocket executives, but they were interrupted by Jesse, James, Meowth, Butch, and Cassidy running into the room panting heavily. What are you doing here? I gave you strict orders to stand guard for this floor. Giovanni yelled, the executives also glaring at them. The police are here, boss. James exclaimed. They are about to break into the building right now. Those twerps must have had accomplices getting the police or something while they were here. We've got to split. Meowth yelled urgently. It was then the group heard the sound of a large helicopter right outside the building. Giovanni glared at Ash, who glared right back. Ash Ketchum, should we meet again, I will introduce to you a world of pain when we do. Consider this your final warning to stay out of Team Rocket's way, or else something will be done about it. He then turned to address his subordinates in the room. We retreat for now. Get to the helicopter. The helicopter appeared outside the large window. Jesse, James, Cassidy, and Butch released their Pokemon, and Arbok, Weezing, Raticate, and Hitmonchan respectively, and ordered them to break the windows. The president had to jump out of the way of the incoming attacks to avoid them. The attacks connected with the window and completely shattered it. They then made a mad dash towards the awaiting helicopter. The Pokemon got in between the Rocket members to form a wall between them and Ash, Serena, and Gary. You guys aren't getting away. Pikachu. Thunderbolt. Ash yelled. The yellow rodent gave a yell and shocked all of Team Rocket's Pokemon while the humans were getting in the helicopter. Arbok. Poison Sting attack. Jessie yelled as she jumped onto the helicopter right after the executives. Launch a sludge attack, Weezing. James yelled. The Pokemon launched their respective attacks, which knocked Pikachu onto the ground in pain. The Rockets then returned all of their Pokemon to continue onto the helicopter. Pikachu! Ash cried as he ran over to it and scooped it into his arms. Hey! Get a move on, Butch! Cassidy yelled to her partner as she got on the helicopter. It's Butch, you got it? Oh, wait. That's what you said, Butch corrected himself before he was yanked on by Cassidy. Eek. Wait for me. James cried as he went on next. The only rocket left was Giovanni himself. The group could hear a bunch of commotion on the floors below them. They knew the police must have stormed the building now. Upon hearing this, Giovanni went to get on the helicopter but was stopped by Ash. You aren't getting away. Charmeleon, Squirtle, Bulbasaur, Pidgeotto. I choose you. Ash shouted as he released his Pokémon. You still want to fight, boy? Giovanni growled threateningly. There's no way I'm letting you escape. Ash yelled again. I was going to let this matter go, but you leave me no choice. I am very angry. Giovanni said dangerously. Forget about that twerp, boss. We need to leave. James called desperately. No. These children need to be taught a lesson right now. Radon, go. The rocket boss yelled. A massive, terrifying, gray Pokémon that looked like a cross between a dragon and a rhinoceros appeared. It loomed over the smaller Pokémon threateningly. Ash didn't back down, though. He called all of his Pokémon to use their most powerful attacks, but Giovanni didn't even appear fazed. Use Horn Drill, Radon, he said. The large Pokémon began spinning its horn very quickly as it lunged forward and actually pushed through all of the attacks, despite being weak to some of them. Then, one boon, it struck Ash's Pokémon with its drill, instantly knocking them all out. Everyone was completely amazed at the Radon's strength. Radon then charged forward and crashed into Ash, sending him flying backwards and hitting the wall hard, effectively knocking the wind out of him. Ash felt if he hit the wall any harder, it would have broken his back. Ash! Serena screamed in horror as she and Gary went over to help him. Giovanni returned Radon and gave Ash an intimidating look. You are very foolish to challenge me, boy, just like your father, he muttered. Why? I don't understand why you, Ash choked out in pain as he was slumped against the wall. There is no use to explain it to you. A child like you will never understand what I hope to achieve, Giovanni said as he turned around and got onto the helicopter. It then began to pull away. I won't let you get away. Ash yelled as he actually got up and ran to the open window after the helicopter despite the intense pain he was in. Ash, don't. Serena cried as she held him back. It's too late. They're already gone. Gary added. Ash struggled against Serena for a little bit before he finally slumped over in her arms. He was in too much pain to fight against her right now. Ash looked at his injured Pokémon. Scattered across the room, the Team Rocket helicopter getting away, the terrified president in the corner of the room, and finally the upset looks of Gary and Serena. Unable to control his emotions anymore, Ash did the only thing he could in this situation. He began to cry. Tears began to spill from his eyes as Serena turned him around and gave him a reassuring embrace. I couldn't do a thing to stop them, Serena. They still got away, he said in between tears. They even have the Master Ball blueprints. Who knows what they will do now? I know. It isn't your fault, Ash. It's okay, Serena said soothingly as she continued to hug Ash. My Pokémon were not even close to a match for him, Ash continued to cry. Everyone then heard footsteps running into the room. Officer Jenny appeared at the doorway with her gun out, followed by a few other police officers, the secretary, and finally, Misty and Brock. Is everybody okay? Officer Jenny asked. We're shaken up, but we're okay, Gary responded as he breathed a sigh of relief. Brock and Misty looked around the half-destroyed room in horror and at the state their friends and Pokémon were in. They could only imagine the chaos that must have happened here a moment ago. It was now about an hour after the police had arrived at Silphco. Various police cars were surrounding the building as the police were leading any remaining Team Rocket. Members out in handcuffs. The group happened to spot Damien and the other two Team Rocket members who were with him being carried out on stretchers to an ambulance with a police guard. The group figured they would be treated at the local hospital and sent to jail afterward. Ash was currently sitting down on the ground against the Silphco building drinking a bottle of water to calm him down. Pikachu was by his side. It was treated with a super potion to heal it of his injuries so it would be fine. His other Pokemon were at the Saffron City Pokemon Center. Misty and Brock were talking with Serena and Gary to learn of the events that had taken place while they were in the Silphco building. Officer Jenny came over to Serena, Brock, Misty, and Gary. She then motioned for Ash to come over, as well. Ash got up from the ground and walked over to the group with Pikachu following him. Once he reached them, Officer Jenny spoke up. "I just want to let you all know how lucky you are to be okay. That was pretty reckless of you to break into Silphco after knowing that it was swarming with Team Rocket members," she said. "We know. We just didn't think we had any other choice," Ash replied quietly. "It's no place for kids such as yourselves to be involved with a criminal organization like Team Rocket," Officer Jenny continued. "You should leave matters such as these to adults." "We know," Ash muttered. "Still, the information you provided for us has been very helpful in leading us to what it is exactly Team Rocket is trying to do, so our police force has you to thank for that. We will be investigating this thoroughly," Officer Jenny finished as she saluted before going off her own way. "Are you feeling better, Ash?" Serena asked him. "Yeah. Thanks, Serena," he replied. "It's been quite a day. What do you say we head back to the Pokemon Center to rest?" Brock suggested. The group agreed to that plan as they began to head in that direction, but Ash was stopped by Gary. "Just a second, Ash. I want to say a couple of things to you," he said. Okay," Ash said. He then motioned for the rest of his friends to go on and that he would catch up in a little bit. Pikachu stayed behind as well. "What is it, Gary?" Ash asked curiously. "Heh, you're still them same reckless Ash I've always known. Out of you, Leaf, and Serena, you've always been the least rational out of all of us," Gary said. "Oh," Ash deadpanned. He, yeah," Gary laughed arrogantly. "When Leaf hears about how we raided Silphco, she will eat you alive for doing something so crazy, but I suppose she will do the same to me for coming with you." "Thanks, Gary. I really needed that boost right now," Ash muttered sarcastically as he imagined his mother fainting from worry or Leaf kicking his butt when they find out. "But that isn't what I wanted to tell you," Gary said as he changed his tone. "Then what?" Ash wondered. "I wanted to say that despite all of that, you are still a great Pokemon trainer," Gary stated. "What? Really?" Ash asked in amazement. "Definitely. The way you handled your Pokemon in Silphco was well done. It doesn't matter that you lost to their boss. Your Pokemon clearly care a lot about you, and you care a lot for them, as well. That's a mark of any good Pokemon trainer in my book," Gary continued. "You really think so?" Ash asked hopefully. "Yep. Just watch out because the next time we meet, I might be the one challenging you," Gary said as he placed his hands on his hips and grinned. "Thanks, Gary," Ash exclaimed excitedly. "You bet. Now let's head back to the Pokemon Center, pal." Gary smiled as he clapped a hand on Ash's back. "Sounds good." Ash replied back as he and Pikachu followed Gary. Ash was extremely happy right now. After years of a heated rivalry with Gary, it seemed Gary finally recognized Ash as a worthy rival. Ash couldn't be happier at the moment at the words Gary had said to him. His greatest rival called him a good Pokemon trainer and even wanted to battle the next time they met. It had been a crazy, stressful day, where Many things happened, but the most important thing was that everyone was safe in the end. Needless to say, Ash and his friends would have a lot talk about tonight at the Pokemon Center. Still, as he, Gary, and Pikachu walked along the streets of Saffron City, Giovanni's words rang throughout Ash's ears. What was Giovanni's connection with his family? Despite the Rocket leader's words to stay away from Team Rocket, Ash had a bad feeling that today wouldn't be the last time he saw Giovanni, whether he wanted to or not.